voice too. It's coming through everything now. Okay. All right, great. This is good. I can speak quieter too. I want to have a big booming voice, but I don't tend to have that. I'm going to be a little bit more soft-spoken. So thank you all for coming. This is great. My name is Jeff Demansky. I'm the executive director of a nonprofit called Hudson Valley Energy. My logo is up here on the slide. It's that one down there. I've been working in this field, environment, energy, sustainability, for going on 30 years now, and I count coming right out of high school. And my nonprofit is focused on helping municipalities and schools and some healthcare organizations do resource conservation, sustainability work more largely. And I'm really glad to be brought in as a partner to this program that is a partnership called Hudson Valley Community Power. So that thing on the top of the slides there is a partnership. And so I kind of like this title slide because it's not just a throwaway. It's not just something we stay on for a minute and move away from. There's a story here about what this whole bunch of logos is in the lower left corner. And all of these logos are what form the partnership, Hudson Valley Community Power. And so I'll talk about them in detail. But before I go into the slides, or we let you look at the details that are on some of the FAQ documents that I shared, I'll just tell you kind of the brief story about what this is all about and where it came from and what it's based on. But I will say again that thank you for signing into the sign-in sheet that I'm passing around just so that I know who's here. But it's also a useful tool, that sign-in sheet, in that, again, there's a column on the far right, and if you have questions you want me to answer afterwards, I can take a look, or if you want me to send information to you afterwards, including if you want the slides, I can send you a copy of the slides. I can send electronic versions of the frequently asked questions document that I shared, or there might be something else that you'd like to see, and I'm glad to share that as well. But what this is, all right. So in very simple terms, this is a state-enabled program. I'm going to be a bit of a policy nerd for a second and tell you the policy story about what this is about. It's community choice aggregation is the name of the program, and it's not anywhere really on this slide yet. But that's the program we're talking about, that this is about community choice aggregation, CCA, and it's an acronym you'll see used interchangeably. And it was enabled by a state regulation through the State Public Service Commission, which oversees utilities, in April of 2016. And in brief terms, what it does, it allows cities and towns and villages to basically form a buying club on behalf of their citizens, their residents and small businesses, to give them a choice. It's not to force anything on anybody, but to give people a choice for where they get their energy supply from, where the energy comes from, and how much it costs. And it was enabled by a state regulation with three things in mind. There are three goals that the state had in mind when it enabled this regulation, and why the cities and towns and villages, which the group that we have now, there's 10 that have selected to be part of this program right now, and that's that line of municipal seals right there. There's three reasons why they decided to pursue this for the most part. One is to get cost savings. It was kind of the requirement that each of them had, is that they're going to do this program for a supply price, a rate for electricity, that it was going to be less on average than the average Central Hudson price, the utility price, over the previous 12 months. So it had to beat basically the average price that people were paying for power from Central Hudson, who was making their decision on a month-to-month basis. Number two, for most of the communities, if not all, was the idea that they were looking for a win-win. Not only do they want cheaper electricity rate for supply, but they wanted that electricity to be from a clean source. And by state regulation, an updated requirement of the program, it has to be from New York State. So this has to be from basically wind or solar or hydropower from New York State. So that's cost savings and renewable clean energy. And the third part of this was consumer protection, because this program, this idea of people being able to have a choice for where their electricity comes from, instead of having the utility make that choice for them on a month-to-month basis, it's something that people can do and have been able to do since the late 1990s. So here's the last part of my policy nerd story. In the late 1990s, many of you may know that New York State became one of the deregulated states for electricity and gas, meaning they basically broke up the monopoly that the utilities had for being not only the people who deliver energy, but also they were not allowed to generate energy or determine where it comes from. So they were not allowed to make money on the supply. So I have some slides. I'll be very redundant. I find that I'm very much a New Yorker, born and bred in the Hudson Valley, so I tend to talk too fast. So I think it's good to repeat myself. But I wanted to start with the basics of the story, and I will repeat myself a lot on these slides coming up. So it's not new information. I'm kind of repeat the story. But again, so since the late 1990s, people have had the ability to have an alternate choice for where the supply comes from. But this is not moving away from the utility. They're not up there. You don't see Central Hudson's logo on the slide, but they're really a partner in the program too, because we couldn't do it without them. So this does not displace Central Hudson. They continue to do the things since the late 1990s that they do to make money, which is deliver the energy to everybody's home. They do the billing, so all of this is done on the Central Hudson bill, and they do repair service. So even if you're in this program, if there's something wrong, if there's a storm that comes through and knocks down wires, Central Hudson is still responsible for doing that repair service. That's what they make money on, is providing reliable electricity to the customers in their territory. So this is about just where the energy comes from and how much it costs for the supply of where it's coming from. So again, people have been able to do this since the late 1990s. And because of that, there are dozens and dozens of companies that have registered in New York State to offer the ability to get a different source of energy. And many people have done that. And many of you probably know the companies that do that. There's like Viridian, there's Ambit, there's Green Mountain Energy, and literally dozens and dozens of others. That will put you into an individual contract if you wanted to get a different source of energy for different reasons. Some of those dozens and dozens of companies are doing that because they can do cheaper energy. Not necessarily clean or not clean at all. It might be fossil fuel based, but it could be cheaper than what you were paying from having Central Hudson do it for you. Some of those companies are doing it because it is clean energy. What we found is typically that is much more expensive, but people have been willing to do that for their interest in supporting more production of renewable clean energy. Many of those companies have been wonderful, and people have been happy to be in those contracts. But what I found in my experience of having literally thousands of conversations over the last half year with customers in the Hudson Valley is that if you don't know somebody who's had a bad experience, if you haven't had a bad experience yourself with one of those companies, you probably know somebody who has. Because while many of those companies are great, a lot of them, particularly with vulnerable populations, have had some very bad dealings where they think they're in a fixed rate or they're in a fixed rate month to month, but then the rate goes crazy. And then they try to get out of the contract, and they find out that that contract has a very steep exit fee, a very expensive price to get out of that contract. So I tell that story because it is the third component of this program, which is very significant for why the state enabled it and why the towns and cities and villages are doing it, and it is about consumer protection. Because this is a program where the agreement, this buying club that we're forming, is an agreement between the administrator that was chosen for the program, which is Juul. All these cities, towns, and villages chose this company called Juul to be the administrator, and they're one of the approved administrators in the state. You have to file to be an approved administrator. The municipalities are part of the agreement, and the supplier that they chose through a request for proposals, which is Direct Energy. The three parties are in agreement, which means that every citizen, every resident, every small business in the participating communities is not in a contract. This thing is structured as a public benefit, like a public swimming pool or a public tennis court. It's there if you want to use it and take advantage of it, but you do not have to. It is a choice, but it is available to everyone in those participating communities. Now, there is the interesting twist on this, which is surprising to people and upsetting to some, but because it does meet those three criteria when we set out this program, that it is structured to be cost savings, because we had a benchmark against that 12-month average from Central Hudson, because it is providing clean energy, and because no one is in a contract, because the contract exists at that higher level, it is allowed to proceed by state regulation as an opt-out program, as an assumed consent program, or an opt-out, meaning that when the program launches, Central Hudson sends us a list of customers for whom they are making a purchase decision for, who are they making a supply decision for. And those are considered the eligible customers. That does not include people who already have a third-party contract, who are in a bill assistance program, or in a bill assistance program, or are demand meter customers, larger customers who have a demand charge on their bill. But everyone else who's not in a third-party contract, is not in a bill assistance program, and is not a demand meter customer, is considered eligible. And so when the program starts, we send out letters to everybody. Before it kicks in, everybody gets a letter. Actually, it'll come from Ray, really, saying, this is what the program, this is the structure of the program, these are the prices, and this is how you get out of it if you don't want to be part of the program. In that structure, that's how you get the good price, is through the opt-out structure. But again, we make it very easy, and that's really my job. One of my major jobs is to make it easy to know what the program is and how to get out of it if you do not want to participate. But again, it is like a public benefit program, like a swimming pool or a tennis court, in that you can choose to not be part of it, but it's there. So you can come back in if you choose not to get out of it too.
I think you may want to make one comment.
Yes.
There is no cost to the residents to be in the program.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's no cost to the town to be in the program too. But yeah, absolutely, there is no cost. There's no subscription fee, with no contract, there's no cost to be in the program. It's just an automatic switchover. Basically, it's a change of the line item on the Central Hudson bill to be in the program. So that's my overview, yes.
Can you opt in and out?
We don't want you to, but in theory you can, just to make my life easier. But yes, you can. You could do that. Yes.
We get a better rate because there are 10 other municipalities involved, or will be separate from the 10?
It's a group. Everyone has the same rate. Of these municipalities, everyone gets that same rate. It's basically that buying club.
It adds the buying power, basically.
Basically, that's what happens, yes. Yes.
Are there any special considerations if you already have some solar as your source of energy?
For this, can everyone hear the question?
Personal.
I should do this. I should repeat the question. She asked if there's any considerations if you have solar on your residence or on a business right now. For this program, there's no impact for that. It does not, for people who have solar in their house, there is a rate at which there's a buyback of energy. This does not affect that rate. But for most people who have solar installed on their home or business, they still typically don't zero out. Most people don't zero out over the year their energy use because of the solar system. This program would give that hopefully better price for the small portion of energy that someone in that condition would pay. Yes?
How long is the price guaranteed for?
This is the contract that we entered with when we started with 6 of the original communities is a 2-year contract. And that's, people say, oh, it's a pilot program. It's not. That's part of the consumer protection aspect of this program. I say for better or for worse, this program is a 24-month program, which means that should the municipalities decide not to do it again, everyone automatically, without any action on their part, goes right back to the original condition where Central Hudson is making the choice for them. So it's not a pilot. It's structured to be that. But, and I'll put up the one slide about the pilot program that took place in Westchester. It's still going on in Westchester. They had a 2-year contract that went from May of 2016 to about May of 2018. And before it ended, they went through the process of doing it again. And more communities joined, and they did it again because it's been proven to be really successful. Your question?
Yeah, just to make clear, the 3 that aren't eligible, the payment plan?
If you're on a bill assistance, not budget billing. It's different than budget billing. I should make that clear. If you're in a utility bill assistance program,
They estimate what we're going to use for a year, and then they bill us, and then if we're over,
you're still in.
they give us like 3-4 months with no court.
That's called, from what I know the name of it, that's budget billing. You're still an eligible customer. And so this should prove even more beneficial. During that true-up period, with a lower rate than we anticipate than Central Hudson, you should get a bigger response. And they may want to reevaluate based on the rate at some point. Any other questions? I'm going to go through my slides again, but I think this is fine. I hope yes?
I'm sorry to have been late, but I may have, if I'd been on time, I might have heard my question.
I'm going to go through the whole thing again. I just gave them sort of like I did like the preview just without the slides for the most part, so yes.
Well, a couple of different organizations or companies have been, courting our business via email or they're out in the community.
No, there's lots of them out there.
And I signed on with one of these groups about 2-3 years ago.
This is a great point I should have made. Yes, go on.
That was sitting outside my health food store.
Yep.
Up in Rhinebeck, and I thought, oh, well, they must be great. They're in front of the health food store.
Right.
How is the Hudson Valley Community Power different?
We did talk about this, so that there are lots of companies offering those services, and what we found for clean energy, I actually have a stat on here where I did a calculation based on the companies offering green energy in our area. We are well below the average of those companies, because typically we found those companies can be quite a bit of a premium. So this is structured to be a win-win-win. Not only less expensive than other clean companies, or ESCOs as we call them, energy service companies. ESCO is a common term for those companies. Not only are we cheaper than them, but this program is structured to be cheaper than the non-clean energy from Central Hudson. So better than the Brown price. So truly a win-win
All right.
with a fixed price for a fixed period. Yes.
So, has this program started for the other 10 yet, or is this
For 6, yeah, for 6 communities. And let me,
a 2-year program?
yep,
So, is there a limited amount of time left of the 2 years?
there is. So
Applying in for the full 2 years?
you're not. You'd be coming in, we want to start this on January, which would mean you get 18 months. Clinton, so in reverse, so the town, they're a little bit blurry, but it's going to be the town and village of New Paltz. I think this is Clinton. The town and village of New Paltz and the town of Red Hook are the 4 communities that are going to be joining. We are planning on having them start on the utility bills in January 1st. It was the city of Beacon, Cold Spring, Fishkill, Marbletown, the city of Poughkeepsie, Phillipstown, that were the original 6 that were in the program and are in the program and have had our program rates on their bills rolling based on meter read dates, but it started about July 1st for those communities. Yes?
So I'm probably jumping ahead, but so you said you've already done what the Central Hudson average has been.
Yes.
And you've already selected the supplier being Direct Energy, so do we know what the rate is?
It is, yeah. It's on a slide coming up, but it's 6.36 cents per kilowatt hour for a 100% clean option. But we call this program community choice aggregation, which means there are several choices to be made by the residents and by the town. We have two price options. The 6.36 cents is for 100% New York State clean energy. There's also a 6.08 cents per kilowatt hour that mirrors the utilities mix that they purchase on a month-to-month basis. So the choices are for customers when the program starts, do I stay in the program or not? And you can choose to opt out and just have Central Hudson bid for your supply on a month-to-month basis, which fluctuates. And in some months will be better than our rate. But on average, as we saw in Westchester and what we anticipate, we're going to beat their rate over the life of the program. But so stay in the program or not. If you stay in the program, you do have a choice. The municipality chooses what to choose as the default between those 2 packages. And every one of our communities so far has chosen the clean energy package as the default, which means if you take no action, you stay in and you make no further choice, you are defaulted into the 100% clean energy, that's 6.36 cents per kilowatt hour. But you can always choose to go for what we call the standard rate, which is a 6.08 cents per kilowatt hour. But the bulk of the savings, based on the 12-month benchmark from Central Hudson, the bulk of the savings come from that clean energy package. You know, just to put it in some dollar terms, the average household in the Hudson Valley, based on usage, will save about $40 to $50 per year in this program. It's not going to, it's not even a really great night out, for dinner for this year, but it is a win-win, especially that's a comparison to the Brown energy price from them. If you opt for the standard rate additionally, it's an additional roughly about $10 per year, bringing you back to maybe $60 per year savings. So the bulk of the benefit is still in that clean energy package, and that's what we want to see. I mean, that's why I'm in the game. Having worked in this area, I'm just amazed by this program where there's definitely cost savings to be had by doing energy efficiency work and resource reductions that you can capture. But I've typically, in the decades of my career, been trying to convince organizations to make those smart choices and save the dollars where you can, but also invest in other things. But not ever have I seen something that was just a win-win program, where through like this aggregating enough households together with municipal leadership, can you get that lower price for clean energy than you're paying for brown energy. So,
Just to add on to that,
Yeah.
is when they did the average, did they just do a straight 12-month average, or did they take into consideration the usage is peaked, during
we did.
the heating season
We did.
versus the AC season?
Yep, we did do a weighted average based on that. So that is more of a realistic comparison for what people will actually benefit from or what they would actually pay. And so that is on their little footnote, but thank you for that. That makes my life a little easier. Yes?
With the addition of these 4 Is there today sufficient New York State-generated clean energy available? Or
There is, yeah, there is.
close to?
You know, I don't know the margins, but there is a buffer zone for this commercial scale because there's quite a bit of hydropower in New York State and quite a bit of wind power. There's currently not commercial scale solar, but the state is very excited. I have a slide about the context and actually more policy nerdiness, but how the state does see this as a really important program to help meet the goals that they have in mind of transitioning the grid to be more resilient and more local generation and more renewable. But there is room now, but there is the last governor's budget, the last state budget that was passed in April of this year includes a very significant provision, $1.4 billion for development of renewable power to be sold only to community choice aggregation communities, because they see that it's kind of a perfect symbiotic relationship of meeting needs. So they say they anticipate many more communities will do this because it makes sense, and so they have a plan to make sure that there's enough renewable power to supply those communities.
But that effort is separate from, it's not part of your mission or this program's mission. They're not going to be the ones going out and saying, hey, we need more energy, we better go build.
Well, there is a symbiotic relationship. It's not completely dependent, but it is something that we're excited by, is that this does really change the mix within New York State. It changes the demand for renewables in the state, and the state sees that. I'll come to you next. Yes?
As you gather more communities who join this program, do you expect the price to continue to go down?
The price is fixed for this allotment, for this contract period. We are in discussions with other communities, and it is possible that we're decided to do this 18 months for the communities that are going to join now, because we anticipate doing another contract, particularly because of that $1.4 billion of push that allows the New York Power Authority, NYPA. It owns a lot of the hydropower generation, and they are basically a quasi-government agency that has extremely good financing rates for doing development. The fact that they're going to be playing in the market is an indication to us that it's going to get even better in terms of renewable energy pricing for these communities. So these short-term contracts are also structured so that we can take advantage of that as new renewables come online and the pricing gets even better. So that I anticipate our price in the next contract period will likely be even better than this.
If I was only interested in this because of renewable energy source and the environment and everything else, it's my understanding that all these solar farms and everything else, Central Hudson has to buy that electric. If you've got solar on your house and you use more than what you need, Central Hudson has to buy that. So whether I'm in this program or not, I benefit from solar power anyhow, right?
To some degree, because Central Hudson has requirements, like in that standard mix that we talked about and that weighted average, there is a state policy that mandates that utilities have to buy a certain amount of renewable power. But it's called the Clean Energy Standard, and it's a ratcheting up requirement that utilities, power distributors have to buy renewables, but it's still in the 20% range. It's still really pretty low. This program is actually pushing the bounds really further, so there is a real kind of compounded benefit.
How are you going to separate that solar energy to my house from Central Hudson power to my house?
We do not. We do not, yes. And that's something that's a very good point, too. I don't want to give the indication that when you're in this program, you're only getting electrons that are going to power your equipment from a solar field or from a wind power. It's not. You get electricity from the grid, from the mix, which includes currently still Indian Point and natural, gas plants. So that's what comes here. But this program changes the demand mix. It changes the mix of what's in there, and there's increasing levels of renewables. I'm going to take a breath. Because there is a part two to this that's really, really exciting too. Because what we've been talking about is that, by state mandate, this program requires, as of March 2018, that any renewable power sold through this program has to come from New York State. So it is a very powerful indicator of demand for the generation mix in New York State. Juul was instrumental in getting this policy enabled in the state. They play in the policy world. And they are very forward-leaning in terms of what they see. And the state is very much in agreement in seeing what they do. They want to do a lot more with this. So they got approval in their plan, and I don't want to confuse things. I'm just going to mention it briefly, and we can come to it at the end. But they got approval to actually bring the benefit even more locally. which comes with even added savings benefit, actually guaranteed savings benefits by facilitating subscriptions for CCA participants to these local solar fields. So it actually has an impact locally within Central Hudson Territory for renewable generation. And it actually is, you might think, well, that's going to be more expensive. It actually comes with a guaranteed savings that's even bigger than this program. Put that in the back of your mind to not confuse you yet. Yes?
If I understood you correctly, Central Hudson buys power from different people every month, depending on, I'm assuming the best price they can get, what fits their.
Various factors, yes.
And I think that you also said that Central Hudson could actually opt to buy from you. Is that correct?
No, I didn't say that. They wouldn't buy from us. Yeah, we are just facilitators. Even Direct Energy is a supplier, but we're not generators. But so Direct Energy buys from the same pool that Central Hudson buys from. But for this program, Direct Energy is only buying from renewable producers in New York State. So Central Hudson would not buy from us. Central Hudson buys from that pool of generators.
So they could buy from Direct Energy then?
Well, no, because again, they're Direct Energy and Central Hudson are both going to the generators, the people actually producing electrons, the companies, and buying from there. So Central Hudson typically buys a broad mix with that that requirement for a certain portion being renewable, but other sources as well. By mandate through this program, Direct Energy is only buying from renewable generators for this program.
But Central Hudson can buy from the same people
Yes.
that Direct Energy is.
Yes. But they can't they cannot forward buy.
I get that.
Which makes a big difference in terms of the price.
That's what
Yeah.
my point is that you're giving us a fixed rate for the next 18 months.
Right.
Central Hudson every month evaluates where they can get the best price. Because I gotta
Yes.
believe that they want to give us the best price they can.
Yeah.
Because it's in their, as a business, if they would give us the most expensive one they could, obviously everybody would want to go with you. So if they have the opportunity to buy at the same rates you are, and they have the opportunity maybe at some points of buying cheaper, I'm not sure how you're competitive with them in that it wouldn't be better to stay with them because every month they're going to try and get the best price, and with you every month I'm paying a fixed price.
Right. And there will be months, like this month, Central Hudson does have a better price in our program. But historically, we saw that their price does fluctuate. And their inability to fix that price, and they're being subject to the potential vagaries of the fossil fuel market where prices could really spike for reasons, and we hear geopolitical stories happening, you take a gamble that it might prove to be better overall than our program. But that inability to fix a price, too, is something that leaves it open to the likelihood that we'll be better off because we can forward buy into the marketplace. But there are absolutely, and I'll show you the graph, we show very frankly that it fluctuates and they are lower than the program price in the previous 12 months than what we've got now. Yes?
Going back to the individual consumer, if we do not opt out for January, we're committed for 18 months.
You can always opt out. That's a very good point. I should say, no, you're not committed for 18 months. If you do not opt out before that launch period in January, you're in the program, but you can always opt out, no cost anytime from the program.
At the end of 18 months, you would then notify us of what the new...
If we do it again, if the municipalities do it again, prior to that, we would line it up like they did in Westchester to have it be kind of just perfect, start again before the one ends, or right when the other one ends.
But you're not committed to more than just...
Exactly. You're not locked in, which is part of the consumer protection where people are in these other contracts and they don't know when it ends. They have to try to fight to get out of it. The prices go crazy.
Right, okay.
Yes.
Does it matter, is there like a threshold number of clients that have to sign up or municipalities that have to sign up to get a certain, some of these
Yeah, we're not-
municipalities are a lot larger than Clinton.
Yes. And so wonderfully, I'm a terrible salesman. I'm an environmental chemist that turned to like a master's in public administration. I'm an awful salesman. So thankfully, I'm not selling the program. I'm just sharing information about it. So wonderfully, we don't have to encourage people to join, which is I love about the opt-out because I would be terrible at it. But you do need to get a certain number before you could even launch the program to have sort of enough demands to be competitive in that marketplace, to bid with the generators. And so when we got those 6 communities, that got us safely into that threshold. With the 6 communities, we had about 35,000 households represented, roughly 35,000 meters in those 6 communities, which is, 20,000 is sort of like the minimum to start having competitiveness, but that 35,000 is in a really great spot. Yes?
How is your power generated? Where's it come from?
It has to come from New York State Power. And it's mostly hydro and wind. And it's forward bid, which means that there will be an actual accounting of exactly where it came from at the end of a 12-month period. It's the way that the market works. But we wanted to know that, we wanted to be able to lock in solid answer on that too, to be perfectly committed to some of the suppliers in New York State. So we said when we did the RFP back in May or April, we said to the bidders, potential bidders, as much as you can, tell us specifically, how much of certain direct, and I actually have a picture of this coming up, where it's coming from. And so we have a direct commitment. Direct Energy is in contract with 5 hydro stations that are near Saratoga Springs for a certain portion of the energy. And based on the total demand, that contract represents about 20% of the energy that's delivered, for our pool of customers. Yes?
How does this compare to some of the solar farm companies that are advertising, like SunCom, et cetera?
For community solar? Yeah.
Well, I've seen people out and about.
Yep.
Trying to get them to sign up. I think SunCom is one of them.
Yes, SunCommon and Nexamp.
If I
There's
sign up with them, they claim 10% savings.
Yep.
I know it's not the delivery portion.
Yep.
How does that compare to Hudson Valley?
It is an additive benefit. You can independently do that. And remember when I was saying that sort of like that localism approach? That's what we have ability to do, is actually to facilitate more people doing that, because it's an additive benefit. And the ones that we know about, most of the models that those companies are doing are just that. They offer a monetary credit. It's really relatively simple and clean, where it's additive in the sense that in this program, you will get a fixed rate for your supply, which will be on the supply line of your Central Hudson bill, which means that the number of hours of electricity you use are multiplied by that rate. That's 6.36 cents, and that gets you your total bill for, plus the delivery charge, your total bill for electricity. So if you're in a community solar project, they basically zero out that electricity bill on your Central Hudson bill, and then the community solar project sends you a bill for 90% of that total charge, thus saving you 10%. So it's an additive benefit.
Which is it? That is or this is?
But they add together. CCA, the fixed price, with the community solar subscription add together to be a benefit, because you get that fixed rate, which we anticipate will be lower than Central Hudson's. So you're already kind of winning there, that little bit, that $40 to $50 per year. But then you get, if you do community solar on top of it, you're not only supporting local power generation and local jobs, but you get that monetary 10% additional benefit. So it ends up being a bigger savings.
So it's not necessarily an either or.
Nope, absolutely not an either or. And that's what we want to encourage people. But we don't want to confuse people. That's why I say, just hold on a second. Because then people are like, wait a second. So it is, and we're rolling it out heavily now in the communities that are participating. Actually, just a few of them. Beacon is way on board. Actually have some, I can show you a poster from the mayor saying that this is just a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you do both? So, all right, I'm gonna just jump through the slides just to see if people have any questions. I think I found, after having been on the phone with so many customers, that it's just better to talk about it and just kind of give you the overview. So now we can look at some picture details. But now we've got a sense of who the partners are. Again, Hudson Valley Community Power is our partnership. And there's the website, hudsonvalleycommunitypower.com. It's the partnership website. It has information about the rates. It has the ways to get out of the program. It does now include information about community solar, that local solar, but it is not a company's website. It's something that's for all of our participants to find information. And then there's other ways that you can communicate. But the agenda that I think I've kind of already covered to some degree is telling you guys what community choice aggregation is, that state regulation. But there is, the specifics about the Hudson Valley Community Power Partnership Program, the fixed rates and who's involved. That's what we've talked about already to some degree too. I can talk specifically about some next steps for Clinton, what to anticipate in the timeline. And then I do include a slide, and I think we probably covered a lot of good ones here. What are the frequently asked questions? I have a slide for that. And then I did want to include this idea of talking about community solar plus CCA, this bullet down here. And then if there was time, I could tell you about what we're doing with the community solar in some of those other communities, how it's exciting as an added benefit for the participating communities to be to help get the word out about community solar. All right, so again, we'll do just a little redundancy to make sure that this fast-talking New Yorker didn't go too fast. In a word, what is community choice aggregation? Just to repeat it, it is a policy that enables municipalities to form a buying club, to source energy on behalf of their residents and small businesses. And then we get to that question, why can you do this? And especially why can you do it as an opt-out? It's because it is a public benefit. It really is structured to be a public benefit program where you save money, you get clean energy, and you're protected from bad contracts. Nobody's in a contract for the buying club. It is a New York State priority. This is when I said I was going to talk to you a little bit more about another policy. The company, the organization that we all pay for through our utility bill called NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research Development Authority, that's NYSERDA. A little bit of our utility bill called the Systems Benefit Charge actually goes to fund NYSERDA. And their job is to basically make our grid better, help us to figure out how to save energy and how to promote renewable energy in the state. They've got a program called the Clean Energy Communities Program. That is a program targeted at cities, towns, and villages. And they wanted to tell them how to do smart decision-making to save money and to promote clean energy and to basically have healthier communities. And it's kind of nice. NYSERDA can be really confusing. They kind of did a nice thing, and they said, there's 10 things. They said, let's just do 10 things. We're going to tell you 10 things you should consider doing, each city, town, and village. There's some code up there, but benchmarking means get a sense of how much you're emitting, do some clean energy upgrades, put solar on your municipal building, et cetera. Do LED lights, change over your street lights to low power LED street light bulbs, improve your fleets, and other strategies. But community choice aggregation is not in any order, is on the list. And I've heard it numerous times now from the manager of that program that far and away, community choice aggregation is the most powerful thing a community can do to address greenhouse gas emissions and to promote clean energy in the state, and even more locally. So, and that comes right from the program manager, Brad Tito, said it numerous times. I'm like, can I quote you on that? And he says, yes, you can quote me on that. So this is a snapshot of a utility bill and saying, what is CCA? And I want to point out that a little utility bill education. This is an old version of the bill. Central Hudson has now improved its bill, they said. They have lots of education for it, and it is more colorful, but I still find it a little hard to read.
You found better ways to hide the information.
Boy, oh boy.
You can't find out what really is your bill.
So this is a general education about the CCA program, but a little preview. I've actually been in conversation with Central Hudson, and we're going to be offering these kind of open house education sessions with Central Hudson so they can tell people how to read their bill. Because I've gotten so many questions and so many concerns for people like, what is going on with my bill? So Central Hudson's been great, and they truly are partners. So we're going to be doing these kind of programs together. But there's lots of lines on there in tiny, tiny numbers, but the main point of this slide is that your utility bill for electricity is two things. It's delivery. Again, that's the part that Central Hudson makes money on, getting the power to you. The lines, the substations, the meters on your house, that's what they do. Then where the power comes from, though, that's what we're talking about, the supply portion of the bill. And it's not necessarily 50-50. Some people it is. It can vary depending on how much you use, how much each one of these sections represent. But again, we're not affecting the delivery. Central Hudson continues to do delivery. We're talking about changing the supply line items. Yes?
In the past, the FERC tax, the 6% FERC tax,
Okay.
and the tax that's coming from Cuomo giving $2 billion or so a year to the 3 nuclear plants so they stay alive up in Syracuse area and all, those numbers get buried into the rate. You cannot see them. I spent over a half hour complaining on the phone.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for this either, where that is.
They don't break it out. So all of these other things get buried into that delivery rate.
Delivery charge, yeah. Which just went up.
10 cents a minute, 10 cents a kilowatt.
Which just went up, too.
Yeah, oh yeah, and it's gonna go up. And it's a
Again.
congestion process here. The FERC tax is the congestion thing here. It's supposed to go away.
Yeah.
It ain't gonna go away.
I know. The challenges are still
So,
huge.
I mean, and same thing when they put the wind farms out in the ocean off of Long Island. We're all gonna pay that bill. So
Oh.
these things go up. Now, are those numbers gonna be added to your number that you charge us? Or are you gonna be clean and not have those numbers charged?
Ours is just a fixed rate. The supplier has to bake.
I understand, but I mean, when it comes on the bill.
Well, if it's in the delivery section, it's in the delivery section. When we've
No,
doing,
no, but, no,
Those additional
numbers are in
charges.
The rate numbers, the kilowatt hour rate numbers.
I'd say that they stay on the Central Hudson side of things, which we can't impact. Because what happened, the supply section, and actually if you see it, I kind of covered it up, but the supply section has, on the pre-program bill, has 3 lines on it. A merchant function charge, that's the MFC right there. It has the market rate and then a market adjustment price. All 3 of those are replaced with 1 line when you're in the program, and it will say direct energy services and the rate, which is right over there. So our program is flat, transparent, and fixed. And so the supplier has to account for any charges that they have to pay in our rate. So it's just that one rate on the CCA program. There are still many, many, many lines on the delivery section. So I imagine, I don't have a perfect answer for that, but I imagine that's where they'll continue to do.
Clarify where they're tucking them in.
Yeah, no, I'm curious.
You can't see them on the bills.
No, I know, it is curious, and they did,
And they said it was in the rate, the 10 cents a kilowatt hour.
probably delivery rate. It probably has effect on the delivery rate. And I know that they
No,
just,
not delivery, on the supply rate,
on the supply rate.
yeah.
Then this should be an advantage from some of that, well, for the next 18 months at least. I mean, the suppliers in the next go-round, I will. I'll definitely look into that.
It's not easy, it's done.
So talking about the supply section, this is a snapshot from my own computer as a Central Hudson customer. I live down in Beacon. For when I wanted to see, for that idea that from deregulation I could go out and make a choice by myself, or any one of you could. And when you go, if you haven't already done it, you can go through Central Hudson's site to say, oh, what are my choices? And I found out for both electric and gas, I don't have gas, but for electric alone, there's 86 offers, basically, that I could choose from individually to get into a contract. And that 33 in the little green leaf below means that there's 33 offers for clean energy from New York, not necessarily from New York State, that I could choose from. And they really vary in terms of what the total price impact could be, from potential savings to paying a lot more. So this is, do you guys have any kind of guess? Anybody want to guess how many people in a typical town or city or village in New York State actually gets into an alternative contract? Not necessarily just for clean energy, but just chooses a third-party supplier? It's about spot on right there. Yeah, it's about 10 to maybe 15% in a very active community. So, I mean, it is a cost savings opportunity. It is an opportunity to express interest in clean energy, but it is overwhelming. It's one of my points here is that with all these companies out there, when you look at the listings, it's very confusing to look at, so people don't. They can, and even when you're in this program, you can get out or you not participate, and you still can do this. But it tends to be overwhelming. So the point I make here is that, again, this program is not forcing anybody. You don't have to do this program. You can choose to opt out. But the idea of it is, it's kind of a beautiful gift, if you will. Maybe a bit bold to say that, but it's kind of a gift. I mean, there's no benefit directly to the municipality of doing this. This is not for their buildings. There's no money they make from doing this program. So what they did is they said, we're going to participate in a program that gives a relatively simple win-win-win package, no contracts, cheaper and clean energy, as an option to kind of save people mental time in trying to make a decision. So I think it's very powerful in that regard. Here's the price slide. The bouncy line is how we developed the benchmark price from Central Hudson. So this is the period between April of 2018, right before we issued the RFP, the 12 months, April of 2018 to March of 2019. That was the month-to-month price from Central Hudson. And then their average price is the orange line, that 12-month average, weighted, as we talked about, for the higher consumption when usage goes up. And that is 6.87 cents. And that's in dollars, so it's 0.0687 dollars per kilowatt hour. But it means 6.87 cents per kilowatt hour. That's the benchmark that we told the suppliers they had to beat. These 2 middle boxes are the 2 prices that the winning supplier came back with. For the 100% New York State renewable clean energy, 6.36 cents per kilowatt hour, which is the blue line. And for the standard rate, which we didn't put on the graph, it's 6.08 cents per kilowatt hour. And so it shows you, these are the savings columns, so that the 100% clean energy is about half a penny less per kilowatt hour than the benchmark that we had to beat. Slightly more for the standard rate, almost 0.08 cents or 0.8 cents per kilowatt hour better. Again, these prices in the contract are for 24 months. There is no minimum participation. Anybody can get out of this at any time. On that previous slide for those individual choices, most of the, I think all of those companies, if you get into a contract, you have to be in for a minimum of 12 months. So in this, there's no, it's a public benefit again. You can get out at any time. There's no exit or termination fee, and there's no individual contracts. We do actually have information on how it's been going so far. The August rate, when we launched the program, the first month of being in the program, we beat Central Hudson's price. Even the 100% renewable, our 6.36 was better than their 6.73 cents. They were close, but we beat it. But they beat us in September. They were down at 5.1 cents per kilowatt hour, and I can't take credit for it, but I'd like to say that we forced them to go even lower because I think they. But we don't get to see. That's a lie. We do not get credit for that. But so it shows you again, there will be months that they are lower than us. When I did see that the September rate, I thought people want to know. So this is, again, this is not an apples-to-apples comparison again, though. This 6.73 cents, that 5.1 cents, that is for Central Hudson's standard mix, which has about 20% renewables in it, but the rest is fossil fuel or nuclear for the rest of the mix. That's a comparison to our 6.36, which has to be supporting renewables in New York. The apples-to-apples comparison, if you look on the opportunities on that previous slide of the 86 companies or the 33 that offer green, those 33, the average is 7.5 cents per kilowatt hour. So we're definitely still beating what you can do by yourself as an individual customer. And there's no contract. These all come, again, with minimums, and some of them have exit fees on their contracts. So here we talked about the Westchester pilot program. This is the one that launched in May of 2016. I left my key off of here. I had one that had actually showed you what the greens and the browns were. The browns are the non-participating communities. When we first did this slide, oddly enough, the greens were the ones that were originally choosing the 100% option. Now all of the yellows and greens have chosen the 100% clean energy option as the default for all of the things. When it launched, there were 110,000 customers. Actually, in the second contract, which started in 2018, there was 110,000 plus customers in more than 25 communities. As of October 2018, the program had saved $17 million. With that $40 to $50 per year savings spread over 110,000 customers over the life of the contract to that period, it had shown to be beneficial. So the program rate, the fixed rate, was better than, in this case, Con Ed's rate and NYSEG's rate, which is very comparable in the differences to the Central Hudson rate that we have by comparison. So it gives us that confidence that over the life of this program, we are going to be not only giving cleaner energy, but at even a better price. And it was, when this first launched, it was the largest renewable energy purchase in New York State history. So where we are, I'm sorry, I left something up on here for a previous thing, but it's going to be Hudson Valley Community Power. On the bill, it's not going to be September. This is a previous slide. But on that supply line, it will say Direct Energy Services. That's how you know you're in the program. Again, it's 100% New York State renewable energy for that one price package. And all these details are going to be in the letter that goes out to everybody from the town of Clinton when the program starts. And anticipating the supply question, where it comes from, New York State map means all of it has to come from New York State. And that little red box is this zoom in right here. And these are the 5 hydro stations that Direct Energy is in direct contract with for all of the power generation from those 5 hydro stations, representing about 20% of our power. And what will be inside that mailing in terms of ways to get out of the program if you don't want to be in the program? 3 major ways to get out of the program, and we try to make it simple. There is, in the mailing, there will be a prepaid, postage-paid envelope with a card that you just have to sign and stick in the prepaid envelope and send back. And it would say, I don't want to be in the program. You can call us. That's our program number, 845-859-9099, and we can take your information to get you out of the program. But you can also always use the form, the enrollment change form on HudsonValleyCommunityPower.com to say, I don't want to be in the program, or to choose a selection rate, or to opt back into the program, which you can do with the phone line as well. Tell us if you want to get back in the program. So next steps. We are working this meeting and the one we're going to hold on the, I think it's the 22nd, are 2 required meetings. After selecting Jewel, we have to do 2 meetings at least to get the word out, and we're going to continue to do work to get the word out about this program in multiple ways. And we'll have a conversation about some publications and advertisements and the like to get the word out. But in essence, we need to tell the Department of Public Service that per our implementation plan, we did outreach, and we're doing our best to tell everybody that we can, well, listen to us, what the program is and how it operates. And so we're going to be filing before the month is out to get final approval from the Department of Public Service to include Clinton and Red Hook in the program. And then, based on our estimation of approval, we'll be sending out the notification mailing sometime in November after Election Day. And to all the eligible customers that we get from Central Hudson. When that mailing goes out, it starts a 30-day clock of required by state regulation, 30-day minimum, that people are able to say, I don't ever want to be part of this program. I don't want to leave Central Hudson making my choice for supply. So that's a 30-day opt-out period, which still gives us time to have everyone who is in the program have the program rate put on their bill by January of 2019.
January 2019?
2020. That was a bad, it's 2020. 2020. I made it January, but I forgot to change it to 2019.
Thanks for making us younger.
Moving us back in time. But then we're going to continue to do our public sessions throughout the life of the program. Something that's different about the Jewel team, that the reason I'm here, is that that outreach that we're doing right now to get to the opt-out period and to get the program rate on, that's what the state requires. But that's not sufficient for Jewel. They said we want to have a resource within the community so that people can continue to ask questions and continue to actually have a resource to the communities to do more good work. And so that's my organization. So as much as they'll have us, the Town of Clinton Conservation Advisory Committee, we're going to keep attending and participating. We'll be here and hold education sessions throughout, including for the other program elements that we think will be beneficial. Not mandatory, but options that can be beneficial for the program. And again, this is our contact information for the program. We do have a general info at HudsonValleyCommunityPower.com. There's the phone number again in our website. We do, and we're offering to do office hours, if it makes sense. I hold regular office hours it went from 3 of the communities, and I updated this to now 4 of the communities, where we're doing regular weekly office hours, just to be available to people. So on Mondays, we're in New Paltz, because New Paltz is one of the joining communities. Tuesdays, we're in Poughkeepsie, right on Main Street at the Public Safety Building, where the police and fire department goes out of. We do Wednesdays in Beacon and Thursdays in Cold Spring. I've got a great growing team, so we'd be glad to be up here if that made sense, or do some regular scheduled Saturdays, evenings, and/or during the day times for just being available to answer questions. And we're always available, and we're always willing to not only have people come to the things that we do, but if you want us to come talk to you, especially if you have a group where it could be a little scale benefit, any association, we are more than happy to schedule to come and do a presentation, just so that people can learn about this and get the word out about it. And then these are my common questions, just to the FAQs I thought would be worth revisiting. So the first one, does this replace my utility company? A lot of people are concerned. They hear about this utility change for electricity. They say, are you replacing Central Hudson? I'm happy with Central Hudson. And we do not. No, we're definitely not replacing Central Hudson. All of the program for this buying club, the fixed rate, is all through the Central Hudson bill. So there's not even a separate bill. Everything continues as it was before the program. So why are we doing this? How can you do this? This is the public benefit slide. Those 3 goals is why we're allowed to proceed in this way by the state regulation. Will it save you money? It's not guaranteed, but we do project that it will save people on the supply portion of their bill 5 to 10% on the supply price, based on the difference between the benchmark. Am I locked into it for 2 years? Absolutely not. No one is ever locked into this. Everyone can exit at any time and actually come back into it at any time. What happens after 2 years? People are used to this experience with the individual ESCO contracts. They say, okay, it's fixed for 2 years. After 2 years, does it go crazy? Do you balloon the rate? This, again, no, for better or for worse, this program is a 2-year period, and the municipalities have to do it again. They have to go through the whole process with the opt-out period and the issuance of letters. Again, it's not an automatic rollover. So it is set in period as a consumer protection aspect. So it can repeat, though. And where does it come from? People often ask that question. Again, it's renewable electricity for the one package from New York State, except, this is sort of like my transition slide, if you do the added benefit of subscribing to a local solar project, you can get a guaranteed 10% savings on top of the fixed rate benefits of the program. And then it can be worth talking about this, but the reason that everyone can do this, you've been approached by those companies, you know, you do not have to do this through the program, but the state sees CCA as a great way to talk to people who are thinking about it and municipalities that are working on giving good price options for their residents. And so we structured it to be something where there can be a benefit that if you do sign up through the program and you're a member of a CCA community, basically there's some overlapping benefits, but it says we add to this fixed price, low cost, cost savings for 100% New York Energy that has consumer protection at its heart. That repeats, but in community solar, it transitions to 100% local clean energy. Actually transitions the actual where you're sourcing energy from the state level to the local energy to Central Hudson territory, and you do get guaranteed savings on top of the fixed rate. And the community benefit, Jewel decided that it was going to fund dollars, it was going to flow dollars from supporting the outreach for those community solar projects to a sustainability fund for each of the communities. So if you go through the Hudson Valley Community Power website and you sign up for community solar, you do the drop down to say, I'm in the town of Clinton, and then the town of Clinton will accumulate $50 per enrollment, a pool of money that Jewel will dedicate to a sustainability project to continue the good work.
Now, when you say 10% off the entire bill, that's the service and
And the delivery. Yeah, entire bill. Electricity portion, not the gas, but electricity portion. So that's my slides. I do have, for those who want the slides, I do have some outside of us. There's some good resources to learn about CCA and these other programs. So I do have some links up there, but there's also my contact information. And you do have FAQs in your hand. I do have 3 FAQs for the community solar, if you're interested in that. And I will be happy to send anything to anybody. And somewhere is that sign-in, so if you want to come up and put a reminder in the notes section, I will send you anything you'd like. Yes? Jewel is Glenn. Hudson Valley Energy, that's me. Jewel is the administrator. I'm in agreement with Jewel. Hudson Valley Energy, that's me, is in agreement with Jewel, and the municipalities are in agreement with Jewel. Jewel is the approved administrator. They're the ones that do all the paperwork with the state and create the RFP, all like the technical logistics of running the program. So they're the administrator for the program. And I never explained. Do you have a question?
Yes, I was just going to say, the Hudson Valley Energy piece is really a subsidiary of Jewel.
I'm in agreement to Jewel, yeah, to do the outreach.
At it in an organizational thing.
Yep.
And then there could be other than Hudson Valley, there could be Green Valley or whatever, some other place.
Oh yeah, for Hudson Valley, yeah, because they do work out throughout the state. But again, the agreement for the buying club for getting this fixed rate is between the cities and towns and villages, Jewel as the administrator, and the supplier that's selected. So that's how the agreement lies.
The other ones are part of Jewel.
Direct Energy is just an independent company that through an RFP for a request for proposals said we're going to give you this electricity at this price. So they're in a contract agreement. So they're not, Jewel is just an independent private company. My non-for-profit is Hudson Valley Energy. Direct Energy is the supplier that goes to the marketplace and guarantees the fixed price. And they're the ones, we wanted Hudson Valley Community Power to be on the utility bill, but Central Hudson and the Public Service Commission said, no, it has to be one of the winning supplier basically shows up on the utility bill. So I was disappointed that it wouldn't say Hudson Valley Community Power so that you knew you were in a CCA. It just says, it'll say Direct Energy, who is the supplier. Yes?
A question and a clarification. I can't, just to clarify, the electricity that we're going to continue to, or we will get under the CCA will still include some dirty energy?
It will. It is part of, because we don't separate out the grid. The grid of wires and poles is still what it is in their connections.
Do you have any idea what percent it would be? Because I guess I thought this was all going to be clean, and so now I'm hearing, no, there's actually dirty in it, but it must be.
For the electrons that flow to your house, but for what you pay for as a CCA customer, your supply dollars, that supply portion of your bill only goes to renewable producers in the state. So you're paying for only 100% clean energy from the state. It doesn't mean that you only get electrons that are clean. So that's the way the energy system works.
And the question for clarification, I can't figure out how the 17 million works if you have 110,000 customers saving 40 to 50
Over 2 years.
over 2 years. It's still, the math doesn't quite get here.
All right, I can double check that, but that was the true up price. So maybe it's slightly more, slightly less, but that was on, yeah. But in essence, it was just the program rate differences.
2 years, 50.
Yeah. Yep. And so, yeah, and Jewel was instrumental in launching that pilot program, so we have good access to find, I can get more detail on that number.
I don't need it for
Okay.
me, but just to make sure it's,
True, yeah, understood. Any other questions? Yeah.
Central Hudson's gonna let you guys take over your poles and their.
No, nope, absolutely not. Central Hudson, that's what they make their money on, is delivery. Since deregulation, they only are allowed to make money on that delivery, which means that they own the poles and wires and the meters on the houses and the substations and everything else.
How do you justify turning it, say, switching from your hydro power to Central Hudson's, whatever, fossil fuel power? How do you justify that switch?
It is a matter, it's mostly, that's what we were just talking about, like the difference between the electrons that flow into your house and the financial transaction of what you're paying for as a customer and what you get for what you pay. And for the CCA program, for the buying club, the thing we've mostly talked about, you're paying for only clean energy from New York State. You're not changing the flow of electrons to your house because it's still basically the whole grid. You know, picture that spider web of wires across New York State that brings power to your house. But in the transaction, you're only paying for renewable power from New York State, which is very powerful in changing the ratio of the mix. Almost immediately, because it makes those renewable power generators more viable. It gives direct flow of money to them, and actually less money. It says to the fossil fuel generators, we don't want your power. So for investors and others, they're less viable. But it also, not only does it make them more viable in the immediate, but it sends to the investors and to those companies themselves saying, you better ramp up, make more or produce more where you are right now because there's demand from all these communities that are doing CCA. So it's going to change that proportion of renewable power in the state. And when you do it more locally too, through community solar, it changes the mix even locally within Central Hudson's territory of the number of renewable generators in this territory. So it changes ratios, but it does have actually immediate impact on these generators. Yes.
This is really a question for Central Hudson, but maybe you know the answer. So to what extent can they, and I probably should know this myself, but to what extent can they tinker with their rates for
Delivery.
Yeah.
They have to file something called a rate case with the Public Service Commission. They basically have to file to ask to raise their rates. And there has to be good justification for why they do it, and it is explained in a very public, call it a rate case. And somewhat coincidentally, they had filed one for an increase, and they were given approval to raise their delivery charges. 10% went into effect on July 1st, and another 10% for the delivery section is going to happen next year in 2020. So I used to love to say that we were just saving people money on their electricity bill, but right now we're kind of neutralizing the rate increases that are happening across Central Hudson because they're increasing their delivery charges. And maybe I'm going to look into it, but maybe for some of those same reasons are in the rate case. All right, I'm here. I have, my contact info here. I have cards. Our contact information is on the FAQ. I'm not running away, so if you have any more questions. But thank you guys for your attention. Thank you for coming. Thanks.